Hello everyone, it's Brittany and welcome back to Brittany Unplugged. And as you can tell by the title of this video, today we're keeping it 100% real. Today we're going to be talking about toxic parents. So if you want to know the signs of a toxic parent and how to deal with a toxic parent and so on, then keep watching. So basically I went on my Instagram and I asked you guys to give me your different opinions of the different signs of a toxic parent. So I'm going to go through some of the responses that I have here and I'm going to give my take on the signs of a toxic parent and how to deal with a toxic parent. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. I have the responses here, but I'm going to leave them somewhere on the screen. But the first response is a parent that ridicules you in private and in public. And I think this shows in a circumstance where maybe you do have a toxic parent and you could be outside in a public setting and maybe they make a remark towards you that leaves you feeling uncomfortable. At home, they can probably point out an insecurity or a flaw of yours that's really affecting you, but then they kind of point it out in such a way where you feel even worse about that insecurity that you may have. Another response is a parent that always points out and reminds you of your failures. Let's say you don't do very well in school. Let's say you don't win a particular match. Let's say you did something. Let's say even if it was the smallest thing, let's say you forget to wash dishes, but then maybe your parent doesn't take it in a way that is good. Maybe they think that you're just doing it to act up, and then they kind of correct you in a manner where they point out your insecurities. They point out the things that you failed at and so on. So it's something that can really have an effect on the child as well. Another response is they control you using guilt. This one is also self-explanatory as well. And this is like when they guilt trip you. Let's say they want you to do something, but then they guilt you in such a way where you end up feeling bad for not doing it. Another response is they don't allow their kid to express negative emotions. So maybe it's a circumstance where they're correcting you and they're always expressing how they feel towards you. They're always expressing that this is how I feel, this is how I feel. But when it comes to how you feel, automatically it means that you're disrespectful. It means that you're really just trying to go against them and you have a vendetta against them, and really you're just being human by having feelings. Another response I got was co-opting their child's goals. So maybe it's a circumstance where you have a particular dream, you express it with your parent, and either there are a lot of situations where maybe your parent feels like they're in competition with you, so they can adopt that idea that you have, or they may really go against that idea that you have because it's not in line with the vision that they have for you. And someone else said, I hate it when parents continuously compare their children. I think this one can have a really huge impact on children in general, especially if, let's say, they have an older sibling who's probably academic, but maybe you're more of a sporty person, but then your parents may want you to be an academic person, but maybe that's not where your field of interest is. So as a result, you may always be compared to maybe your eldest sibling, saying, oh, well, she did well, she went on to university, she went to do this. When you see when she was your age, she never did this and stuff like that. So I think it can have a really negative impact on the child as well. Another response I got was parents who don't believe you unless you have an alibi or someone to back you up. A lot of the times you may be expressing something to your parent. If you're in a situation where you are encountering a toxic parent and you're trying to kind of like get them to see your point of view, but as long as you don't have someone backing you up, as long as you're really trying to explain the truth, and even if the truth is long-winded and that is the actual truth, then they may not believe it and they'll automatically think you're up to something, you're being sneaky and so on and so forth. But I'll go into detail about that later on in the video. Other responses that I got were beating for poor reasons, unnecessary shouting, hitting you when you fail, even if you worked hard. This one I'll also explain later on in the video, but then this is kind of in reference to how a parent may punish you in a manner that has no justifiable reason and there's no basis for what they're doing. A lot of the times, if you're correcting a child or if you're punishing a child, there has to be a background as to why you're doing it. If you yourself can't even realize why you are punishing the child, then you probably shouldn't be doing it in the first place, because there's a reason why you're correcting the child. If you're correcting a child, you need to make sure that the child is going to learn something from it, not find ways to do it again in a more intelligent way without you noticing. If you're punishing a child really needs to understand why they're being punished, why this kind of action is being taken on them in a way where they will learn from it rather than fear it. Another response is tells you to man up rather than giving emotional support. So this goes hand in hand with not really being able to show negative emotions because maybe it's very foreign in the household. So once you show the slightest bit of negativity, then it may be turned into something huge. So that is something that can have a really negative effect on the child because they need that emotional support as well. Another response I got was one-sided communication, like you can't talk to them, kind of just instructions and yes mom or yes dad kind of energy. I feel like in order for there to be a parent and child relationship that really blossoms, there has to be a level of communication that goes beyond instruction, that goes beyond ordering the child. There has to be that emotional connection as well. So this can also have a damaging effect on the child. Another response I got was discourage your dreams and goals to force their own onto you, and they never ask for your opinion on certain family decisions, especially when the decision is something that largely affects you and you're old enough to make it. this can also really taint the way the child views things. It can taint the self-esteem because they end up always feeling like they need to always depend on the parent, because if the parent doesn't really agree with how they're doing things, because maybe it's not in line with their opinions, then automatically the child may feel like they're doing something wrong by opposing the parent's beliefs. So this other response as well about the parents opposing the child's wants, dreams and desires is also something that can affect the child as well, because they actually end up being in a place where they feel like they can never make decisions for themselves, because they always need to rely on their parent, because maybe the parent has instilled an atmosphere, an environment where whatever they say goes, even up until your 20s or 30s, even up until you get married and have your own family. Then this can really affect the way you do things as well. Other responses that I got was when your parent is selfish, and this is very self-explanatory, when they put their needs before yours, and this is really the basis of the definition of a toxic parent. A toxic parent puts their wants before you, and they kind of perceive you to be in a particular image. So the moment you do something which is out of the image that they perceive you to be in, then automatically there's a problem. And the last response is visible favoritism. Every parent has a favorite, but when it's too obvious, it can hurt others. I think in society, right, in general, it's normal for humans to prefer one person to the other because maybe their personalities are more on a level that we can vibe with. And even with parents, it's possible that they do have a favorite child, but I feel like if they really, really do show it, like this response said, then it can really impact the child in a negative way, because if they can't receive the love from their parents, they won't really expect to receive it from anywhere else. Now, those are some of the responses that I got for the signs of a toxic parent, and I'm going to go into some of the other signs of toxic parents as well, and they also go hand in hand with some of the responses that I read out earlier. So grab a pen, grab a notebook as I explain and go into further detail about the signs of a toxic parent and how you can deal with a toxic parent. Now, the first sign of a toxic parent is when your losses are the biggest thing in the world. Whether you didn't get good grades, whether you forgot to wash dishes, whether you forgot to make your bed, whether you forgot to do something, or you did something that was wrong, you will end up feeling like whatever you did is something that is unforgivable, and you feel like you can never bounce back from that. Now, it's one thing for your parent to correct you and then you feel guilty for what you did, especially if you did something that was really, really, truly terrible. But it's another thing for you to walk away from that conversation feeling as if you are the worst person in the world because you did X, Y, and Z. It can even be something as simple as forgetting to wash one dish. They will put it on a pedestal of, think of the worst crime in the world, even worse than that, 10 times worse than that, because even if it's something very small, it'll be turned into something that is huge, and you feel like whatever you did is going to impact the whole of society, because that's just the vibe that you got from the conversation. So you need to distinguish the difference between guilt and feeling like what you did is unforgivable and feeling like you're the worst person in the world. The moment you have those feelings where I am the worst person in the world, why did I do that, I'm such a horrible person and stuff like that, then you should be able to differentiate that from your guilt and know that if you are feeling like you are the worst person in the world and what you did can never be forgiven, then that's a sign that you are dealing with a toxic parent. Because if they're correcting you, yes, they're correcting you because maybe they may be disappointed with what you did, they may be upset with how you handled a particular situation, and you are supposed to feel some sort of remorse, especially if you did something which is out of order completely. But then if you walk away feeling more insecure than when you did, then there's a problem. Now, one thing that I said earlier was that your punishment and the way you punish a child, let's say if you are a parent and you're watching this, or you want to be a parent when you're older, every single punishment must have a justifiable basis. If you are punishing a child, then you need to make sure that whatever method you're using to punish them is a way where they will learn something from it. They will learn that, okay, I can't repeat the same mistake again. Because one thing you need to remember is that within toxicity breeds secrecy. If you punish a child in a way where you're just doing it just because, and you don't really understand why you're doing it, but then you're just inflicting pain because that's what you want to do, then your child is, number one, going to be very, very scared of you, and they'll flinch every time they hear you move, every time they see that every time they see that maybe you could be coming in their line of vision, for example, or they could hide who they really are from you, but then it may appear as if they are being a very secretive person, but in actual reality, they're not being a sneaky child at all, but it's just that they can't really express themselves to you. So then it may come across as them being sneaky, when in actual reality, they're scared of how you'll react. If they show any form of emotion, then you'll just oppose it. All of those things are things that you need to be mindful, especially when a child is growing up, because you don't want them to grow up in an environment where they have to be secretive about their feelings, the things that they want to do, the things that they don't like, and all of those things as well. You need to ensure that if you are going to have children, or if you have children already, they must always feel like they can come to you when they're in trouble, rather than running away from you when they're in trouble. Now remember that we all mess up, some more than others. Some people do things to a greater magnitude than another person will. But just remember that you are still human at the end of the day. You are still growing up. You're still going to go through certain circumstances, but that doesn't necessarily mean that if you slip up, yes, own the fact that you did slip up. And if your parent finds out, or if your parent is very upset, if they're upset, then they're upset, because they're human too. They're allowed to feel what they want to feel as well. And also, as their child, they are protective of you. But never feel like you are the worst person in the world, like the world is over if you do something wrong. But if you continuously feel that way, then that is the sign that you are dealing with a toxic parent. Now this brings me to the second sign of a toxic parent, and this goes hand in hand with one of the responses that I read out earlier, and this is when you are not allowed to feel. Now, one thing I know for sure is that children want to have a relationship with their parents where they can be open and honest with them about everything. So if they're upset about something, if they're opposing how you're feeling, and if they express how they're feeling, they're not doing it to form a vendetta against you. They're doing it to build a connection with you. It's like you can't feel upset, you can't feel anything negative. The moment you cry, you're weak. The moment you oppose what they think, you're stubborn. There's so many things that they may take in the wrong way, even if you're just trying to show your human side that you are feeling negative forms, that you are feeling something negative, because it's not every day where we can all feel happy and healthy and rainbows and sunshine and stuff like that. You're going to have days where you feel low, where you feel down, where you may not agree with your parent, especially as you get older and your view of the world changes. Now, if you find you're in a situation where your parent can express how they're feeling to the fullest, 110%, if they're angry at you, they will show it. If they're upset with you, they'll show it. If they're happy with something that you did, they'll show it. But then you can't do the same. If you're upset, you have to hide it. If you feel like you want to cry, you have to do it by yourself, and you can't really express any form of negative emotions around them. That's the sign of a toxic parent. Now, in a lot of cases, they may manipulate you and they may gaslight you. They may kind of flip around your emotions. The moment you show any ounce of weakness, the moment you oppose anything they have to say, then they may have a tendency of flipping it around on you and making you feel like you're crazy for feeling that way, making you feel like, oh no, you shouldn't be feeling that way in the first place, when there's a reason why you were feeling that way in the first place. So if you find you're being manipulated, you're being gaslit, especially if you're being gaslit, because a lot of the times when you do feel something, a lot of the times, if let's say you want to make a drastic decision, or let's say you're feeling, out of your usual self, then you may tend to question things a lot. You may tend to overthink it a lot. A lot of the times as toxic parents, they will kind of feed on the fact that you are overthinking about it, and they use it as an opportunity to flip it around on you and make you feel like you are the bad person for feeling that way, feeling something negative towards them. When in actual reality, if your parent slips up, and you may not feel happy about it, but then they may kind of make you feel as if you're an awful person for feeling that way in the first place. But one thing that we all need to remember is that if a child is expressing something negative to their parent, if they're feeling upset about something, if they feel like they need to cry about something, they feel like they need to have an outlet, and their parent is the outlet, listen to internalize, but do not listen to interrogate, and do not listen to attack. Because the reason why a child goes to their parent about something which is very deep is because they want to build that emotional connection with the parent, not to attack them in any form of way, not to do anything else out of the ordinary. They just want to know that their parent is going to be at their beck and call. But if you find you're in a situation where you can't express yourself fully, everything around you feels very restricted, then that's the sign that you have a toxic parent. Or if you find that you're being enabled to kind of hide your emotions, and that's the sign of a toxic parent. Now, the third sign of a toxic parent is when they belittle you or your dreams. Let's say you want to achieve something, but they want something different for you. And let's say there's someone else that they know of, another family where the child in and around your age is achieving something that they want you to achieve, but you may not want to achieve for yourself. And they'll probably most likely compare you to that person, saying, why can't you be like her? Why can't you do what she's doing? Even though that's not where your line of vision is. So it's almost as if just because it is something that they do not want for you, it becomes insignificant, and they make it seem like it's something unachievable, rather than them pushing you to do better, pushing you to get to your goal, pushing you to achieve your dreams and all of that stuff. then they kind of drive you away from it, and they make you feel like you're never going to get there, you're never going to do that, like why would you do that in the first place, like you won't make it, you won't even make money, all of those things. And as for belittling you, not even just your dreams, you can be at a social gathering and let's say your parent says, oh, those jeans look a bit too tight on you, don't they, or you've put on a bit of weight, haven't you, kind of thing. Or let's say if it's around, even if they say that around people, or even if they say that to you at home, usually around people it has more of an effect because there's other people experiencing the toxicity. But a lot of the times, let's say it's at a family gathering, maybe your relatives may join in on them talking about you. Or let's say if your parent allows other people, other relatives, whether it's their friend, but maybe it's a family friend, or maybe it is another relative of theirs, to say something bad about you in front of them. It's those things that really contribute to the toxicity. Or even if you do something wrong and then the parent puts you in a position where your self-esteem is compromised and everything, and your worth is compromised, then that is a very toxic situation. Because I know that despite whatever you may do wrong, if someone else is going to come and put dirt on your name, and if someone else is going to, even if you slip up in any manner, yes, your parent may be upset with you when you slip up, but if someone else is going to come and throw dirt on your name in front of your parent should be able to stick up for you and really say, you can't say that, and you can't say that about my child and stuff like that, because the child must come first in any circumstance. Now, the fourth sign of a toxic parent is neglect. Now, this is when the respective toxic parent is not really present, like they're there, but they're not really present, and they're not really aware of what's going on in your life, and they kind of just, I don't know, isolate themselves from you. But then it's more of a functional relationship. It's more of a yes mom, yes dad. It's more of a situation where you're kind of given orders and you just follow those orders, but there's no level of communication. You don't actually talk about different things other than you doing what your parent wants you to do. And if a child grows up in a place where they experience neglect, a lot of the times they may not even realize that they have experienced a very neglectful environment, but then it's only when they're older they begin to realize it. And maybe if they don't realize it, they may actually pass it on to their children, because what they've seen growing up is all that they know. So since that is all that they know, then that is what they will pass on. Those are the values that they will pass on. Because let's say if it's an environment, let's say if someone grows up in an environment where it's a very family oriented place and people want to know what's going on in each other's lives and stuff like that, then they will automatically have a mindset where they will want to pass that on to their children. They'll want their children to be family oriented people as well. So your household, your environment, everything that happens in the household, everything does start at home. Everything that happens in there is something that will then be passed on to, whether to school, to, I don't know, to when you have your own children, to the workplace, everywhere you go. So a lot of the times, if a child experiences neglect and someone who's not very present, it may have a very negative impact on them, because when they grow up, they may find it very difficult to let people in. They'll develop a lot of trust issues, and also they may shut people out as well. So if you find that it's a very neglectful situation, then that is a sign that there is toxicity there. Now, the fifth sign of a toxic parent, which is one of the biggest signs of them all, is when they guilt trip. Usually with guilt tripping, there's zero respect for boundaries. There's zero privacy. Privacy does not exist. It's almost as if you are a property of them, and basically when you don't do something that they want, then they guilt you into doing what they want, and then you feel very bad for not doing what they want you to do. They will go to all lengths to get you to do what they want you to do, even if it means that you feel worthless in the process. A lot of the times with the toxic parent, they display narcissistic traits. And with being a narcissist, you put yourself first and you put yourself on a pedestal, which is above everyone else. And you will continuously compromise other people's self-esteem, even if it's their child's, to make sure that they stay on a pedestal where their ego is all the way up. But with being guilt tripped into doing something, you always need to remember, in the moment, it may be very hurtful. Maybe your parent is correcting you, saying that, you never do anything for me. This is why you do this. This is why, I don't know. They may say something that may really hit a nerve and may really make you feel really bad about yourself, and may make you feel some type of way about it. But one thing you need to remember is that 99.99999% of the time, those words and the things that they're calling you are not a reflection of who you are, but it's just because they want you to do what they want. So as a result of that, they may end up calling you names or doing something that gets you to do it, so you end up feeling like, oh no, if I don't, let's say they called you stupid or they called you dull, for example, and they said it in the process of guilt tripping you, and maybe you don't do what they want you to do. A lot of the times, if you've been guilt tripped, you end up feeling like, oh no, if I don't do this, then I am confirming to them that this is the person that I am. I am confirming to them that I am that dull person, that stupid person that they called me. But 99% of the time, it is not a reflection of you. Now, these are some of the signs of toxic parents, and if I left any out, don't be afraid to leave some in the comments as well. But in a lot of circumstances, we always think about, okay, this person is toxic, my parent is toxic, my parent is doing this, but there are ways to deal and manage a toxic parent. The first way to deal with a toxic parent is you need to manage them. So let's say if it's a circumstance where, let's say if you know you don't do the dishes, your parent is going to have a go at you and your parent is going to call you all sorts of names and it's going to really affect you. Make sure that, for example, when you wake up in the morning, just make sure you do the dishes, make sure you do, let's say if you cook at home, do the cooking early and just make sure you do all the things that you know you may get into serious trouble for so that you don't have to face the wrath of whatever they have to say to you and how they feel about you as well. So this is just a method of managing them because you may feel like the worst person in the world if you don't get this stuff done and your parent reminds you that you didn't get this stuff done and they call you a whole bunch of names. So make sure that you do the things that you know you will get in trouble for, whether it's housework. And as for schoolwork, make sure that you work as hard as you can and just know that it is for a season. Always remind yourself that this is only for a season where I'm going to receive such and then it's over and it's done with. And the second thing you need to do in order to deal with a toxic parent is you need to emancipate yourself to the fullest. Make sure that you either get a job, make sure that you're raising money on the side, figure out what you want to do, research on the things that you want to do so that you are so self-assured to the point where no one can step on your dreams, no one can step on your vision because you know yourself that you are happy with what you want to do and you're content with what you want to do. A lot of the times words get to us a lot more when we're not self-assured, when we're not yet fully aware of the things that we want. Then a lot of the times words can get to us because if we're not sure about what we want, then what other people think of us will end up being what we believe. So you need to make sure that you emancipate yourself to the fullest so that, let's say if your parent may oppose what you want to do and they may end up calling you a bunch of names, you know for yourself that that is what you want to do. So once you find your vision and maybe they're not in line with your vision, make sure you do so much research, raise money, do the things that you know will get you to where you want to be despite what they may say. So yes, of course, internalize what they're saying, but don't take it to heart, especially if they're calling you a bunch of names and stuff like that. Make sure you know yourself what you want so that you are so self-assured to the point where their words may affect you to a certain extent, but not as much as they would if you didn't know what you wanted. Brings me to the third thing that you're supposed to do in order to deal with a toxic parent, and this is finding an outlet for your emotions, but also making sure that you limit the amount of access that they have to you as well, but also limiting the amount of access that your parent may have to you if they are toxic. Now, having an outlet can be writing, it can be music, it can be actually talking to someone, a therapist, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, your sibling, if you're close to your siblings, and so on. It can be a number of people who you can go to, someone you can confide in. People, sometimes when you want to rant about something, you're not necessarily asking for someone to give you advice, you just want to let out how you're feeling. But it's more of a tricky circumstance when it's your parent that is making you feel that way, because usually your parent is the person that you should be able to go to and tell them those things. But if your parent is inflicting that toxicity, you need to find someone who you can just tell them this is how you're feeling. Just remind yourself that it is only for a season. If you work hard, you emancipate yourself, like the first way to deal with a toxic parent. If you emancipate yourself, raise money, make sure that you really, really know what you want for yourself. You just need to remind yourself this is a season. Once you're out of the house and doing whatever, then you can focus on yourself. And in terms of limiting the access that your parent has to you, this means that you don't necessarily need to tell them everything that you are doing. Let's say you joined a club, let's say you joined choir, let's say you're playing a particular sport, and you know they're going to oppose whatever you have to say, and you know they're going to have something negative to always say about the activity that you're doing. There are certain things that you don't need to voice because you're opening up your heart to more damage. Limit the amount of communication you have with them so that the words that they throw at you are limited as well. Because if you let them in too much and you know that they are toxic, if you let them in and let them know every single thing that you are doing, then it's going to give leeway for them to always pinpoint your insecurities, pinpoint your weaknesses, because they know literally anything and everything about you. I'm not saying be rude to them and lock yourself in your room all day, every day. But I mean, you need to just limit the things that you say to them. Yes, have a level of respect. There has to be a line of respect, especially if they are your parent and you're living in the same house and you are under their care. You need to have a level of respect for them, but then you don't necessarily need to voice everything that you're doing if you know that whatever you're doing is going to cause them to oppose whatever you have to say regarding that activity. So really, the less that you say, the less damage there will be, but remember to be respectful in any way possible, because the moment you show any sign of disrespecting or doing it intentionally, it's going to be even worse. All hell will break loose, because then they will know for sure that you're being disrespectful. It gives them leeway to manipulate you, guilt trip you, gaslight you, and call you any bad name you can think of. So I hope this video helped you, and I hope all of these things I mentioned helped you. And if you have any other contributions, don't be afraid to leave them in the comments as well. As always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and hit the bell to be notified when I post new videos. Stay safe, everyone. God bless you all. Bye.